Before dawn, the Roman camp is strangely quiet. Thousands of soldiers stand in neat ranks, their shields resting against their knees as mist drifts across the ground. Horses snort in the darkness. Campfires have burned down to glowing embers. Every man waits for the familiar blast of the trumpet that will signal another disciplined advance. Instead, a different sound cuts through the morning air. It is brief, unmistakable, and terrifying. Veterans freeze. Officers exchange anxious glances. The order spreading through the camp is not one of attack. It is the signal every Roman soldier prays he will never hear. Somewhere beyond the trees, something has gone terribly wrong. For centuries, the Roman army earned its reputation as the most disciplined military force in the ancient world. Its legions conquered kingdoms, crossed mountains, built roads through hostile lands, and defeated enemies who often outnumbered them. Roman commanders knew that discipline won battles long before swords ever met. Yet even this machine of war had one weakness. It depended on communication. In the chaos of battle, shouted commands vanished beneath the crash of shields, the screams of the wounded, and the thunder of thousands of marching feet. Orders had to travel farther than a human voice could reach. Lives depended on signals. The Romans solved this problem with carefully organized military music. Trumpeters, horn players, and standard bearers were far more than ceremonial figures. Every distinct note carried meaning. One signal ordered soldiers to advance. Another commanded them to halt. Others instructed individual units to wheel, reinforce a flank, or prepare camp. Every legionary spent years learning these sounds until reacting became instinct. Confusion meant death. Hesitation could destroy an entire army. But among all the calls that echoed across Roman battlefields, one carried a weight unlike any other. It announced that the army's formation had failed. The orderly machine that Rome trusted above all else was breaking apart. Depending on the situation, it could order a withdrawal, a regrouping, or even the desperate retreat of an entire force. Hearing it was not merely inconvenient. It was an admission that control itself was slipping away. To understand why that signal inspired such fear, you have to stand where an ordinary legionary stood. Your helmet limits your vision. Dust clouds hide the enemy. You cannot see the general. You cannot even see the opposite end of your own formation. The only certainty comes from the standards rising above the crowd and the familiar sound of military horns. If those signals suddenly change, everything you believed about the battle changes with them. Victory can vanish in a single heartbeat. Roman commanders understood this psychological power. They guarded their standards fiercely because losing them could crush morale. Likewise, they relied on trusted musicians whose signals had to remain clear, even while arrows darkened the sky. A single mistake could send thousands of armed men moving in the wrong direction. Ancient writers describe moments when confusion over signals contributed to disorder, proving that communication could be as decisive as courage. One of the clearest examples came during one of Rome's darkest military disasters. Deep inside the forests of Germania, 3 Roman legions marched under the command of Publius Quinctilius Varus. The roads dissolved into mud. Rain soaked boughs and shields alike. Dense trees broke apart the long marching column until units could barely support one another. The Romans believed they were moving through friendly territory. Instead, they had entered a carefully prepared trap. Without warning, warriors under the leadership of Arminius erupted from the forest. Spears flew from every direction. Trees concealed the attackers, before they disappeared again into the darkness between the trunks. Roman formations, so effective on open ground, could not fully deploy. Trumpet calls echoed through the woods, but the thick forests swallowed sound. Commands reached some soldiers, but never reached others. Officers struggled to restore order, while the enemy attacked again and again. You can almost feel the growing uncertainty spreading through the ranks. Every horn blast raises another question. Is that the order to advance? To regroup? Has another cohort already fallen back? Somewhere nearby, wounded men shout for help. Standards disappear into the rain. No one knows how much of the army is still intact. As the disaster unfolded, familiar signals that normally represented confidence became reminders of desperation. The Roman system depended upon visibility and coordination. In the forest, both had collapsed. One legion after another was overwhelmed. 3 entire legions disappeared from the imperial order of battle, along with their sacred eagle standards. The defeat shocked Rome so deeply that the Emperor Augustus is said to have cried out in grief, demanding that Varus return his lost legions. The names of those destroyed units were never used again. Yet the terrifying signal of withdrawal did not always mean defeat. Sometimes it represented survival. Roman commanders knew that stubborn bravery could become fatal if circumstances changed. A disciplined retreat required even greater courage than an advance. Soldiers had to turn away from an enemy without descending into panic. That demanded absolute trust in commands. This is why Roman training was relentless. New recruits marched incredible distances, carrying heavy equipment. They practiced changing formations until every movement became automatic. They repeated drills under exhausting conditions because commanders knew that fear makes people forget. The purpose of discipline was not simply to create better fighters. It was to ensure that when the dreaded signal finally sounded, the army would respond with order instead of chaos. Not every enemy fought according to Roman expectations. The Parthians, masters of mounted warfare, forced Roman armies into situations they had rarely experienced. At the Battle of Carrhae, horse archers surrounded the legions, raining arrows from every direction while avoiding close combat. Roman commanders struggled to adapt as casualties mounted hour after hour. Traditional signals still echoed across the battlefield, but no formation seemed capable of stopping the relentless attacks. The soldiers waiting beneath their locked shields could hear horns calling for movement, regrouping, and renewed resistance. Yet each new command seemed only to delay the inevitable. Eventually, confusion spread through both officers and ordinary legionaries. The army fractured. The retreat became a nightmare. One of Rome's wealthiest and most powerful generals, Marcus Licinius Crassus, never returned home. Carrhae became another painful reminder that discipline alone could not guarantee victory against every enemy. There was another danger hidden within Rome's system of signals. Enemies learned to exploit it. Ancient warfare was filled with deception. False retreats lured armies into ambushes. Captured standards confused advancing troops. In some engagements, visibility became so poor from dust or smoke that soldiers struggled to distinguish friend from foe. A misunderstood signal at exactly the wrong moment could create panic even without overwhelming enemy force. That is why Roman commanders rarely relied on sound alone. Horns worked alongside standards, mounted messengers, experienced officers, and carefully planned formations. Each layer reinforced the others. Remove enough pieces, and the entire system became dangerously fragile. As centuries passed, Rome adapted. Military communication became more sophisticated. Fortifications improved. officers learned from disasters that had nearly destroyed the empire. But no amount of experience could eliminate one simple truth. Every army, no matter how disciplined, depends on trust. Soldiers must believe that the orders reaching them are correct, that their commanders understand the battlefield, and that the men beside them will obey those same commands. Picture one final battlefield. The fighting has raged for hours. The air smells of sweat, blood, and damp earth. Shields are scarred beyond recognition. Veterans who have survived countless campaigns glance toward the standard one more time. Then, the unmistakable signal sounds across the field. Some men tighten their grip on their swords. Others silently thank the gods they are still alive. The order is given. The legion begins to withdraw, not as a mob fleeing in terror, but as a disciplined force struggling to preserve itself for another day. To an outsider, it may sound like nothing more than the blast of a bronze horn. To a Roman legionary, it carried the weight of life and death. It announced that the carefully ordered world of the legion had entered its most dangerous moment, when courage alone was no longer enough, and survival depended entirely on discipline. The Roman Empire conquered vast territories with steel, engineering, and remarkable organization. Yet behind every victory stood something far less visible. A language of signals understood by thousands of soldiers, who often could not even see their commanders. When that language flowed smoothly, Rome advanced with astonishing precision. When it faltered, even the greatest legions in history could descend into fear. Long after the horns fell silent and the battlefields returned to grass, their echoes remain a reminder that civilizations are not held together by weapons alone. They are held together by trust, communication, and the ability to remain united when everything around them is falling apart. For the Roman legionary standing beneath a darkening sky, no sound captured that fragile truth more clearly than the secret signal that told an entire army the battle had taken a terrifying turn.